Good morning, Happy Valley, and welcome back to another edition of the PSU 365 podcast on pennstate.rivals.com. Back again for a weekly segment talking some Penn State wrestling with our wrestling analyst, Joey Klender. Joey, it's a big week. I thought it was going to be a bigger one, but they ended up losing last week as Iowa is not the team I guess we thought they were.
No. Michigan came out, dominated them, won all 5 of the first 5 matches. Came off with a little bit of chip on their shoulder. Real Woods got put on his back and arguably pinned. It wasn't a good look for the Hawkeyes last weekend. Not the kind of match you want to have going into Penn State week, but looking forward to a good one this Friday. So
yeah, I know the match obviously isn't home; it's out in Iowa. Or no, wait, yeah, I'm right on that. Yeah, I'm losing it right now. I am like I said before the pod, I am operating on like multiple forms of caffeine. I have espresso, I have coffee, but besides the point, let's just jump right into the predictions and kind of preview each weight class. The first weight class, 125 pounds, number 2, Braden Davis, certified freshman stud. I've said this every week. He just keeps moving up in the rankings. He's going to go up against number 7, Drake. I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Ayala. Yep.
Ayala. Yeah, that's close enough, right? What do we think is going to happen here? It's actually probably one of the better matchups this week.
Yeah, I think this is probably going to be Davis's toughest match that he's had all year, other than last weekend, which was, highly contested. And to be completely transparent, I did not think that Davis won that match. I thought Penn State got gifted a call. I think Davis should be 13-1, not 14-0, but it is what it is. Can't go back and change it. So, but Ayala, he was ranked number 1 at several points earlier this year. 25 has just kind of been one of those weight classes where it's really a toss-up. And nobody's really sure who's going to, be standing at the top of the podium in March. But this is going to probably be Davis's toughest test. I don't think he's really wrestled in an environment like Carver Hawkeye before. And on top of that, Ayala's no joke. He's got good experience. He's won some big matches, but he's coming off of he got beat last weekend by D'Agostino, who Davis beat not handedly, but pretty convincingly. It's going to be a good test. I mean, we've seen a couple, really good freshmen from Penn State at 25, have really solid starts to the year. And then, they go into Iowa and their first loss is against Iowa. Meg Ludis did it against Matt McDonough. He was undefeated, I believe, or maybe had one loss. Went to Carver Hawkeye, lost. Nick Soriano did the same thing against Thomas Gilman. So Dave's is going to have his hands full. It's going to be a tough match, but, he's really done well this year, so he's got a chance to win it.
Yeah, that should be a fun one to kick things off. Next up is the 133-pound matchup. Aaron Nagao is going to go against number 20 overall, Colin Shriver. Colin was bouncing around a little bit last year at 141 and 133, had a meh record, but it seems like he's doing a little better this year. Anything to worry about here?
This is kind of tough because Nagao's he's had, he lost last weekend, obviously. I just feel like I still am waiting for Nagao to kind of have his breakthrough moment. He's got that one attack. He gets neutralized a lot, gets into scrambles with guys, and it's just, he hasn't hit the point where he's like finishing shots consistently and getting to a point where, you feel super confident in him, going out and wrestling as he should. He's obviously a very good wrestler. He's ranked 6th in the country, but I'm still waiting to see Nagao kind of like break through a little bit. So, this might be the week where that happens. I was kind of been between Shriver and Brody Teske, who transferred from Penn State to Northern Iowa to Iowa. Teske's kind of been underwhelming. I was actually surfing the Iowa forums a couple hours ago, and it seems like a lot of the Iowa fans are just kind of over Brody Teske. He's just kind of been underwhelming, and I think a lot of them expected a lot more out of him. So Shriver's getting
Interesting.
the start. I think Nagao probably wins this match, but I don't know. I feel like for Nagao to really make some noise come, the postseason and um, you know, contribute significantly to the team score at Big Tens and at Nationals, he's gonna have to get to a different attack. He's gonna have to finish quicker. He's just not
Hmm.
quite there yet, I don't think.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he's got some stuff to work on for sure.
Okay. So that's gonna be an interesting one at 133. Next one, 141 pounder. Might be the best match of the night. Most exciting, I should say. Bo
Mhm.
Bartlett, number one ranked against number two Real Woods. Real Woods coming in from Stanford, finished as the second place 141 last year, and Bo was third place.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
definitely a interesting one. You think this could kind of go either way, or is just Real Woods after last week just kind of going to fall apart a little bit?
I'm not sure what Real Woods' deal was last week. I kind of heard some different things. I've heard
Hmm.
everything from sickness to he's just not super interested right now. But I have a hard time
Hmm.
believing that he's not interested if he's number two in the country. I think if he wasn't
Yeah.
interested, he probably wouldn't be wrestling or wrestling to the level that he has. He's got one loss.
Yeah.
He's a solid opponent. Bo, he had a tough match last week against Mendez, won in overtime. It was another one that was kind of, you know, a lot of people weren't really sure what happened in overtime. There was kind of a up in the air call regarding a takedown, but to me, it seemed like Bartlett had danger points, so I think he should have won regardless. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, this is going to be a tough one. Bo, even though he's undefeated and he's number one, he's still he's kind of he kind of hasn't really hit his peak yet, which is concerning and
Hmm.
frightening at the same time. Concerning for fans of him and of Penn State because we're moving pretty deep into the season here. We're in February, and he really still hasn't had like a standout performance or hit his stride, I guess. But
Hmm.
at the same time, that's kind of scary for everybody at 41 because if he does hit his stride at the right time right before Big Tens, then everybody's pretty much in trouble, and it's pretty much his to lose. So, um, yeah, this will be a good test, especially considering it's at Iowa, and Bo dropped this match last year 4-1. So, um, looking forward to seeing how he performs against Woods this weekend.
Hmm. Now, do you think this could be the match that turns around? Not, I shouldn't say turns around his season technically, but gives him that extra boost to try to make that big run in NCAA's later on.
Yeah, I think Bo's definitely going to need to, I'm not saying that he needs to come out and like tech fall real was or major him or anything
Yeah,
like that, but I think that
be,
he
be
needs
impressive.
to I think he needs to kind of believe in himself a little bit more.
Hmm.
And it's hard to say that, but he just hasn't looked like himself like he did last year. And so I'm really kind of hoping that things, improve with
Hmm.
him because he's just been in a lot of really tight matches. And I kind of was expecting him to separate himself from the rest of the field a little bit this year, at least from everybody who's
Hmm.
ranked a little further back. But, he had a tough match against Indiana
Hmm.
where that was a last second takedown against a 20th ranked kid, and he
Hmm.
won that match. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, you can't really complain too much. He's number one. He's 14-0, so
True.
you can't sit here and say he's like wrestled like shit or something. But,
Yeah.
um, you just after his really strong finish to the year last year, you
Hmm.
were especially me. I mean, I can personally say I was hoping for a little bit more, but it is what it is. So,
Yeah.
should be a
No,
good one.
totally get it. Speaking of good ones, the next one should be a pretty good one too at 149. Number
Mhm.
10, Tyler Kasich, the freshman. Again, another freshman phenom, if you want to call it that. Is going against number 12, Caleb Rathjen. Caleb's a third year sophomore and bounced around a little bit between 149 and 157, but he seems solidified at that 149 spot now for Iowa.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, Rich, so
Oh,
it's like kind of hard to hear you.
oh yeah, yeah.
um,
Well, you know, Kasich and Rathjen.
okay, yeah. I mean, this is another one it's going to be tight. I mean, you can argue that the first half of this duel is going to be really tight. On paper, Penn State, you know, there's they on paper they should win every match here. Um, but it doesn't work out that way, of course. But the Kasich match is very interesting just because he's looked really good against pretty much everybody that they've put in front of him, especially last week. He's had a lot of really good performances against tough ranked guys. He had another impressive performance last weekend against D'Amelio. So, um, you know, I think that these first 5 matches are just such a toss up, pretty much every way, and this one's no different. The way Kasich's wrestled lately, I don't really see him losing until he gets up to some of the more some of the tougher guys, ranked fifth and above. So, yeah, I mean this is kind of a toss up here. I think either guy can win. I don't really know. I don't really know which way it's going to go. I just think it's kind of 50-50. And you have to take into account that, Carver Hawkeye is not an easy place to wrestle in. It's intense. It's loud. Iowa fans are passionate and knowledgeable. And, of course, then another thing is you have to deal with how Iowa wrestles. They're not super offensive. They're very, they like to keep things on the feet, keep things scrappy. I mean, that was a big thing with the duel last year. I mean, Penn State won the duel, but there was a point halfway through it where it kind of looked dicey. And it was because all the matches were very low scoring. They were very close. Nobody really could separate themselves from anyone in particular. I mean, even Carter Starachi's match against Nelson Brands was a tight one, and on paper, Carter should have, wiped the floor with him. I think it ended up being like a 3-1 or 3-2 match, but that's why it's always very interesting to wrestle Iowa, is because they're not a super offensive team. They never really have been. They're just scrappy and tough, and they grind you down. So, with these close ranked matches like Bartlett and Woods and Kasich and Rathjen, it's really just kind of a toss up to see who has it that day.
And next up at the 157-pound matchup, it's number 1 Levi Haynes is going to go up against number 5 Jarrett Franick. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. It's Franick. Dude, I'm not good with this stuff.
It's okay.
never will be. I'm just going to keep guessing. What do we think is going to happen here? I know Levi's a second-year guy going against the graduate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Haynes is ranked number 1. He's looked pretty good this year. He hasn't been. Also, he's another one that really hasn't been as dominant. I thought coming into the year with how well he wrestled last year, making the finals, he'd be a lot more dominant. But he's looked. He hasn't really put himself in any danger except for the Michigan State match. Franick's a good opponent, but I don't know. I just Haynes' defense has been pretty good this year, and his attacks have been better. Last week he looked just looked more offensive and looked a little better than he has previously. So, I think Haynes probably wins this match. Realistically, Penn State could go into the break with pretty sizable lead.
Yeah.
Michigan did it. There's no reason Penn State can't. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, another good one coming up at 165. Number 7 Mitch Messenbrink hasn't lost yet. Is going to go up against the other North Dakota State transfer in number 6 Michael Caliendo. What do we think kind of happens here? I know Caliendo has 1 loss technically.
Yeah.
He does.
So last week or last weekend against Ohio State, we saw, in my opinion, the first time I've seen Mitch Messenbrink show a weakness in his game, and it was when he was on bottom. So Braden Davis, when he's on bottom, he sits out almost immediately, and his feet, he's basically sitting on a sofa with an ottoman in front of him, he's just sat out with his elbows in. And when you wrestle a lankier guy, their move most times when they're on top is to throw legs in and try to ride. And that's what Mitch had done to him last week. And, Mitch had 2 reversals. He got out of some he got out of not necessarily sticky situations, but he got out of, being under the guy twice and got points out of it. But he was really neutralized on bottom. So that kind of throws some interesting stuff into the mix because you know that guys ranked higher than him and coaches, yeah, or even pretty much anybody, coaches and guys at 65 noticed that. You know, I think that without a doubt, Mitch was probably told by Kale and the rest of the coaches that when he's under and you have a guy who they know is going to throw legs in, he needs to sit out immediately because he just had no answer for it last weekend. And it was like, it was kind of like, to me, a little surprising because, you know, Mitch looked great offensively like he has every other match this year, but that was the first time I've ever seen him kind of like just have no answer for what was going on. Now, this match with Caliendo is pretty interesting because, you know, Mitch hasn't had a problem really with anybody yet, even with Amin. I mean, he went out and just pushed the pace for the whole 7 minutes. Looked great. This one's interesting, but I think if Mitch can just wrestle his match and not get caught up in the Iowa style, if you will, I think he's going to be fine. I think he's really going to be okay until he hits any of the guys in the top 4. That's when you're going to kind of see some resistance in terms of his attacks and stuff like that, just because it's not going to be as easy to get shots in on those guys and finish. But definitely see Mitch winning the match. You know, I think he's going to crawl into, you know, top 5 here soon, if all things go well. But yeah, it should be interesting. I think Mitch has done nothing but impress people this year. But I mean, it was like pretty much my biggest takeaway from last weekend was that, you know, he does have a weakness, and everybody in the country picked up on it. And it was the fact that when he's on bottom, he if you throw a leg in, he's going to have trouble. So I'm sure he's working on that this week.
Definitely interesting one. 174, Carter Strachey, number 1, is going to get a solid test in Patrick Kennedy, who was Big Ten runner-up at 165 last year and also won the under-23 men's freestyle national championship in the 2022 World Team Trials, I think it was. So, I mean, it seems like a decent test, but I'm assuming Carter's probably going to run away with this one a little bit.
Well, Carter hasn't really looked like himself. I mean, even last weekend, he didn't look like himself. I think he kind of got worn down last week and sort of, my dog's dreaming and his tail is slapping the bed. But, yeah, I mean, I kind of think that Carter's I think he might still be kind of dealing with whatever illness he had, Michigan and Michigan State weekend. He just kind of looked a little gassed, a little slow. I think last weekend he won like 3-1 or something pretty tight. You know, this is going to be Kennedy's a good opponent, obviously. You know, I think Strachey wins. I think he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. It seems like there's some personal stuff going on with him in Iowa with something, I can't remember who said it, but somebody said that he's very overrated. But I guess we'll see. Should be an interesting one. Yeah.
Next up, 184 pounds. It's going to be Bernie Truax at number 6 overall, going up against a freshman who's had his struggles. Iowa native in Aiden Riggins. I'm assuming here this might get kind of ugly for Iowa.
Yeah, Truax. You know, he's definitely a good wrestler, but last week, you know, against Ohio State, you know, kid he wrestled and kept looking for the same, you know, kept reaching behind and trying to do the same move, and Bernie really never caught on to it, and ended up costing him, and he got flattened and pinned. You know, I'd really like to see Bernie get back on a roll here because he's a very talented wrestler. He's a very good wrestler. He just kind of he hasn't showed the mental fortitude, I guess, and the sharpness that it takes to really win the tight matches. I think he looked excellent last weekend before he got pinned. Really, really good. Offense looked great. He was getting to his attacks. He was finishing shots. He looked awesome. I think he just needs to be a little more aware. I think he should probably go out and dominate this match. I don't think he'll get in too much trouble with Riggins. So, yeah, I think that, you know, in a perfect world, Bernie could go out and major Riggins and pretty much close the duel at this point. It could be over well before this, but
yeah,
I think Bernie just needs to kind of get some confidence going. I think last weekend was definitely a shock to everybody, especially how good he looked.
Yeah, 197 pounds. Number one, Aaron Brooks, going to go against number 11, Zach Glazier, who's had quite the year for Iowa, actually.
Yeah,
Is this going to be a bigger test? Yeah, bigger test than you think? For the most things?
It could be, but Brooks has been, in my opinion, the best wrestler in the lineup this year. He just really hasn't had a match where it's been even remotely close. If you had to go vote for the Hodge Trophy winner right now, it'd probably be him. He's just looked awesome. And, last weekend was no different. He just really hasn't had a close match. He's just really outclassed everybody. I think that this will probably be no different. I would imagine Glazer's getting his first loss of the season this weekend. So,
yeah. And at this point, you would assume the match is probably pretty much wrapped up. Number one, Kirk is going to go up against either Ben Kurter, who's a freshman, or actually both of them are freshmen, or number 29, Bradley Hill. I'm assuming if it's already wrapped up, they're probably going to go Ben, but I guess you can't really tell. It's really hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll necessarily matter. I think they're just going to kind of go with who it's probably already been determined who's going to start. They probably did a wrestle off or something like that, but Kirk's and other guys looked really good. If you had to rank the three most dominant guys on the roster, Brooks was probably one. I'd say Kirk's probably two. Starachi's probably three. Just based on the fact that Starachi's, he's just kind of been a little slow based on, I guess his little illness or whatever's going on. But Kirk's looked awesome this year. He looked really good last weekend against Feldman, and he's just looked great so far. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he performs this postseason and everything like that. So, I realistically, I think Penn State should win 9 out of 10 matches. I think there's maybe one or two that could go Iowa's way, but this is probably going to be like the least close of any Iowa Penn State duel, and in terms of just the matchup. Iowa I know they've only lost the one duel to Michigan, but last weekend was just it was very surprising to see them not even take a single match of those first 5. It was really incredible. So, like I said earlier in the pod, and it's probably not the greatest thing to go into Penn State week with a lack of momentum, but it is what it is. So,
no kidding. So Carver Hawkeye Arena, 9 p.m. Friday night. If you're not traveling out there, it's going to be televised on Big Ten Network, BTN, whatever you want to call it. Before we sign off, I want to talk a little bit about this upcoming Rutgers match as well, because it is the BJC duel. Number one, I want to ask you, you don't have to go through all the entire lineup. Is there any matches that kind of stand out to you, or matchups?
33 and heavyweight should be 2 good matches. Shulver's looked really good, and Nagao has also looked good, but I've already shared my sentiments on Nagao.
Of course,
Kirk should definitely win the match, but their Rutgers heavyweights had a really good year. He's 14-2. He's ranked number 8. I'm not going to even try to pronounce his last name because I can never remember. I was going to try to ask you to
do it too.
A couple good matches there. For the most part, Rutgers has a couple good kids. They should have a couple All-Americans this year. But in terms of, the dual score, I don't think it'll be very close.
Yeah, fair. This is at BJC. This is it's a weird
Monday.
Time too.
Monday at
on a
7.
Monday.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Brutal. I believe it's also the blackout for Penn State.
Correct.
Where they'll wear the black singlets and all that. I know everyone on the boards is pissed off about it. I'm assuming you're probably in the same boat.
Yeah, I'm all for the white singlets. I think they should roll out the white singlets and do the white out once a year, but
would make
the
sense,
black and pink, I know it's the OG colors or whatever, but I think it's
Still.
time to retire those Johns. I think they're just. I think it's time. I think it's time to hang that whole thing up.
I know, like you said, it's the original colors, blah blah blah, but it's the whiteout is such a big thing for football. Make it a big thing for wrestling too every year. Make
Especially
your best match
in
a whiteout, like
especially in the BJC. I think that
yeah,
if you're gonna get people fired up about a Monday night match at 7:00 against Rutgers, you should probably bring out all the stops, and the whiteout's probably a good strategy to do that. But
yeah.
who knows?
Well, any other final thoughts, I guess, before we sign off here? I don't think there's really anything else to talk about. 2 matches
No.
this weekend, Monday, whatever you want to call it. So
Yeah, nothing on my end. Should be a pretty straightforward weekend.
Should be an interesting one. We'll have more. I think we'll have a preview out either later today or tomorrow. I'm not really sure what day the article preview is coming out. But for me and Joey, that's another episode of the PSU 365 podcast. Signing off.